Frank was 73 years old and lived alone. That night, 5 burglars had chosen his house as an easy target. The old man seemed to be sleeping and wouldn't resist. But the burglars didn't know who Frank really was. He had served 30 years as a Navy SEAL, seen 3 wars, and participated in countless covert operations. 10 minutes later, when police arrived at the house, the scene they witnessed would be something they'd never forget in their careers. Because Frank wasn't just an old soldier. Before we dive into this incredible story of unexpected justice and second chances, tell me in the comments, from which city are you watching this video today? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button to support Honor Stories. We're here to share the moments that remind us never to underestimate the quiet strength of those who served. At 2:15 a.m., Frank Miller's house in one of the suburban neighborhoods was shrouded in silence. The 73-year-old retired soldier appeared to be in deep sleep in his bedroom. His house was small but orderly, his garden well-maintained, and he got along well with his neighbors. Everyone knew him as just a kind old man. A black van stopped at the end of the street. 5 young men got out. Their leader was Michael Santos, 28 years old, a known burglar in the neighborhood. With him were Danny Rodriguez, Jake Wilson, Tommy Chen, and Kevin Brown, all in their 20s, experienced street criminals. "This house is perfect," Michael whispered to the others. "Old man lives alone, no security system. Neighbors are far away." Danny surveyed the area. "Are you sure? Old guys sometimes keep guns," he said. Michael laughed. "What can a 73-year-old grandpa do? He probably has trouble walking even with a cane," he replied. Jake approached the door. "Let's go through the back door. It's easier there," he suggested. The 5 men moved to the back of Frank's house. Kevin pulled lock-picking tools from his bag and began quietly opening the door. Everything inside was dark and silent. "See, I told you," Michael muttered. "Easy job." Frank wasn't actually sleeping. The old warrior's ears, thanks to decades of training, were alert to even the smallest sound. The moment he heard the back door opening, he opened his eyes but didn't move. He regulated his breathing and began listening. "How many people?" he thought silently. From the footsteps, he determined there were 5 different individuals. Young, not experienced, making too much noise. The burglars slipped into the house. Michael illuminated the area with his flashlight. "Okay, everyone stay calm," he commanded. "Danny and Jake check the downstairs. Tommy and Kevin go upstairs. I'll check on the old man." "What if we wake him up?" Tommy asked anxiously. "Then we handle it quietly," Michael said coldly. "Won't be hard for an old man." Frank continued lying motionless in bed. His eyes were closed, but he was listening with full attention, tracking the burglars' movements. In his 30-year military career, he had moved stealthily behind enemy lines countless times. This situation felt familiar to him. Michael approached the bedroom door. He shone his flashlight on Frank's face. The old man looked very calm, as if in deep sleep. "He's sleeping," Michael whispered into his radio. "Continue." Frank was making plans in his head during this time. 5 people, probably armed, young, and aggressive. For a normal old man, getting out of this situation would be impossible. But Frank wasn't a normal old man. Danny and Jake downstairs began collecting Frank's television and other electronics. "This television is old," Danny said disappointedly. "Won't be worth much." "Doesn't matter," Jake replied. "There must be other things." Tommy and Kevin upstairs were searching the rooms next to Frank's bedroom. "Not much here," Kevin said. "The old man seems poor." Michael was still watching Frank. "Don't rush. Old people hide valuable things," he observed. That's when Frank moved. But this wasn't just any movement. With the reflexes given by 30 years of combat training, he silently got up from bed. Without making footsteps, he moved behind Michael. When Michael sensed something had changed, it was too late. When Frank's hand touched his shoulder, he startled. "Stay quiet," Frank said in a low but determined voice. "Make one sound, and your life is over." Michael's hair stood on end. This voice didn't sound like a drowsy old man's. This was the voice of someone accustomed to giving orders. "Who?" Michael began, but Frank cut him off. "I said stay quiet," Frank stated firmly. Frank turned Michael around and looked at his face. In the old man's eyes was a coldness Michael had never seen. These were the eyes of someone who had seen much, experienced much. "Now you're going to call your friends," Frank said calmly. "You'll tell them to come here, and you'll be very calm." Michael's hand began to tremble. "We were just—" he started. "I know what you were doing," Frank interrupted. "Now call them." Michael called out with a shaky voice, "Guys, come here!" Danny, Jake, Tommy, and Kevin came running to the bedroom. But the scene they saw wasn't at all what they expected. The old man had Michael under control, and there was something very serious about the man's posture. "What's going on, man?" Danny shouted. "Stay calm," Frank said. His voice was soft but authoritative. "I don't want any of you to get hurt." Jake lunged forward. "What can this old guy do?" he challenged. Frank had anticipated Jake's movement. Thanks to 30 years of training, he easily deflected Jake's attack and brought the young man to the ground. The movement was so fast and professional that the others couldn't understand what happened. "Impossible," Tommy muttered. Kevin pulled a knife from his bag. "Old man, back off, or," he threatened. "Or what?" Frank asked calmly. "For 30 years I faced thousands of enemies like you. And do you know where they all are now?" The cold confidence in Frank's voice froze Kevin. "Who are you?" Danny asked fearfully. Frank looked at them. "My name is Frank Miller. I served 30 years as a Navy SEAL. Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, 47 covert operations. And right now I've noticed you're in my house," he revealed. The 5 young men were shocked. This old man, the person they thought was an easy target, was actually the most dangerous man they'd ever encountered. "What happens now?" Michael asked with a trembling voice. Frank thought, "When I was your age, I made mistakes too. But I learned. You can learn too," he reflected. "What do you mean?" Tommy asked. Frank led them to the living room. "Sit down. I'm going to tell you something," he instructed. The 5 young men had to sit. Frank looked at them. "When I was your age, I was living on the streets," Frank said. "I had no family, no money, nothing. Just like you, I could have gone down the wrong path." Danny asked in amazement. "So what changed?" "One day, I got caught," Frank said. "But the police officer who caught me gave me 2 choices. Either I was going to jail, or I was going to enlist in the Army." Frank told them his life story, how he joined the Army, how he became a SEAL, how he changed his life. "Now I'm giving you the same choice," Frank said. "Either I call the police, or you give yourselves a chance to change." Michael asked in amazement, "What do you want us to do?" "First, get an education," Frank said. "Find jobs, earn your own money, and most importantly, show respect to others." Jake objected. "It's not that easy." "Nobody said it was easy," Frank replied. "But it's not impossible either. I did it, you can do it too." Frank got up and went to the kitchen. He brought out plastic zip ties from there. "Now I'm going to put these zip ties on," Frank said. "Then I'm going to call the police. But the story I tell them depends on you." "What do you mean?" Kevin asked. "If you take what I said seriously, I'll tell the police you just entered the wrong house and didn't harm anyone," Frank explained. "If you waste this opportunity, I'll tell them the truth." The 5 young men looked at each other. They understood that arguing with this man was pointless. "We accept," Michael said. Frank put the zip ties on them. But during this time, he continued talking to them. "There's always a second chance in life," Frank said. "But a third chance rarely comes." Danny asked, "Will you really help us?" "If you really want to change, yes," Frank said. "But that's your decision." Frank called the police. He spoke calmly on the phone. "Hello, this is Frank Miller. There are people who mistakenly entered my house. The situation is under control. Please send an officer," he reported. 10 minutes later, 2 police officers came to the door. Officer Sarah Johnson and Officer Mike Davis were experienced officers. Frank, who opened the door, greeted them. "Hello, officers. There are 5 young people inside," he informed. When the police entered, they were surprised. 5 young men were sitting on the floor, zip-tied, but calm. None of them showed signs of injury. "What is this?" Johnson asked. "They entered the wrong house," Frank said calmly. "But they didn't harm anyone. They're just confused." Davis looked at Frank. "How did you control 5 people by yourself?" he inquired. Frank smiled. "I was a Navy SEAL for 30 years. I'm used to it," he explained. Officer Johnson turned to Michael. "Is this true?" she asked. Michael nodded. "Yes. We made the wrong decision. This man is giving us a second chance," he admitted. Davis asked suspiciously, "You're not going to file a complaint, Mr. Miller?" Frank thought. "Number if they keep their promise," he decided. The police reported the situation and took the young men away. But thanks to Frank's explanations, there were no serious charges. A week later, Michael came to Frank's house, this time through the door. "Mr. Miller," he said hesitantly. Frank opened the door. "Michael, come in," he welcomed. As Michael sat down, he asked, "Will you really help us?" "I gave my word," Frank said. "I'm a Navy SEAL. I keep my word." Frank helped Michael find a job. He also talked to the other 4 young men separately. He showed each of them different paths. Danny became a construction worker. Jake started working at a local garage. Tommy and Kevin returned to school. Months later, the 5 young men invited Frank to dinner. "Thank you," Michael said. "If it weren't for you—" "No," Frank interrupted. "You changed. I just showed the way." Danny asked. "But why? Why did you help us?" Frank looked out the window. "Because someone once helped me too. And kindness is like a chain. It passes to the next person," he explained. That night, as Frank lay in his bed, he thought, for 30 years he had fought for his country, but perhaps he had won his most important victory that night in his home, changing the lives of 5 young men, guiding them to the right path. "The real war is here," he muttered to himself, "on the streets, in homes, in people's hearts." And Frank Miller, retired Navy SEAL, had begun a new mission. This time, he wasn't fighting with weapons, but with patience and wisdom. This story reminds us that sometimes the most unexpected encounters can change lives forever. Have you ever had someone show you a different path when you needed it most? Share your story in the comments below and let us know what city you're watching from today. If this story moved you, please subscribe to Honor Stories and hit that notification bell. We publish new stories every day that celebrate the power of second chances and the wisdom of those who served. Because sometimes the greatest victories aren't won on battlefields, but in the quiet moments when one person chooses to help another find their way. Thank you for watching, and remember, it's never too late to change your path, and it's never too small an act to change someone else's life.